you can have the greatest product, the greatest projects. If you don't know how to talk about this and who you're supposed to talk about this with, it's going to be great, but nobody really is going to use that.
The WISE conference in Berlin is closing in fast. Today we have Mathilde Neu from Resonance Agency on the podcast. She works with PR at the intersection of music, technology, and investors. This is a goldmine of advice of how to communicate as a startup within music and music tech. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Sound Connections podcast. Today we have a partnership episode with WISE Conference where we're going to have a great guest at the conference, Mathilde. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I just realized I pronounced that very Danish.
Yeah, that's the right way to do it.
Oh, that's good. Okay, great. We're going to talk about something that's very close to my heart these days, and that's communication within music tech. You're one of the leading players in the space. You've done some really cool things. You are the co-founder of Music Tech France. You are the co-founder of Music Tech Europe. And you spend your days communicating on behalf with music tech companies. It's very relevant for our audience. But Mathilde, I normally ask the guests to make a small introduction of who they are and what they do, just to set the scene from your angle. So could you explain to us, who are you and what do you do?
I'm the founder of Resonance Agency, which is a communications and business advice for music tech. So originally I've been trained as a communicator, and I just wanted to put all these skills towards helping music and tech dialogue better. And it led me to work with music tech companies and helping them create the right message to the right people and make sure that their new products or projects were heard well. And since the field is fairly new, at least, we created Music Tech France as well 4 years ago now. And this is a collective, an association based in France for French innovators in music as well. And we have about 80 companies that joined the association now.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to dive right into it. I need some advice because I need to understand, what is it that music tech companies consistently fail at communicating?
Yeah, right into the main topic. And I'm guessing the most common thing that we've seen with Resonance is usually the fact that either you have people coming from the tech side and speaking to the music industry as they would speak to any other industry. And that wouldn't make sense. I mean, music is a very specific field, and there are some very complex things to wrap your hand around. And so there's a language, a way to talk to that industry that is very specific to it. And that's one of the main things. And sometimes we've also witnessed a few people in the music industry noticing something, an issue that they could fix, and they get on with their project. But the tech side, the entrepreneurship is pretty rough as well to understand when you're not part of it initially. That's always a bit difficult to know both these fields, which are pretty specific to each other. And that's usually the main thing, trying to just get the word around without really targeting and not adapting to who you're talking to. That's usually the main issue that we've been seeing.
Amazing. I see this all the time. We'll talk more about it, but I will take the freedom just to go a bit back and understand you a bit more and to see where you come from. So could you for me spend a couple of minutes explaining to me what's your background and how did you transition into this?
So I started from the music industry, actually. I worked as a PR agent for some artists at a PR agency. And I then worked in the innovation side. So I was working on content and some events in the innovation in France and very generic topics. And I found music again there. So I was in charge of a few startups and trying to get to get them either financed or getting on various events. And I heard about a few music focused events, and I ended up at Meetem back in 2017, and I did that in 2018 as well. I was in charge of the French Tech delegation. So that was actually one of the first times that some music startups were getting to that kind of events, at least in that range. And that was very interesting because at that point I was really in between the innovation side and the music side, trying to speak to each other. It wasn't really easy at that point, and I decided to go and focus on that. So that's why I was hired at a company at that time. I left and I built my freelance portfolio there. So I used to do that by myself. Actually, I was doing communications for some startups, very specific, and trying to get some metadata providers or any very, very specific topic in the music industry getting a bit heard. And at some point, the workload got a bit rough. So I entered a mentorship program, actually. So I got into Meetem, which is a mentorship program that runs for 6 months back in 2022. And I met my co-founder over there, actually. So I co-founded with Natasha, co-founded Resonance, which is now my communications agency for music tech specifically. That's how we got there.
Amazing. There's so many things to unfold. One thing you said is that at Meetem in 2017, there was sort of a, let's call it, lack of understanding between new technology and the music industry. That seems to now maybe have, that's my assumption, bridged a bit. But first, explain to me what was the gap in 2017?
Well, for instance, one thing that we tried to do over there was to get everyone to meet the French institutions that were represented at Meetem. So we did an actual meetup on the first day. They were on the level below us, so we just got there and we brought the whole delegation with us. And it was pretty difficult to engage in meaningful connections. I mean, the first things that these startups from our delegations were hearing was, what about the rights and what do you want us to give up for your solution, basically. And it was very, it wasn't really open to discussion. But we had our faults as well, because I heard some of the people that we brought along saying, yeah, we're going to redefine the way that we manage rights. Like, you can't do that. You can't say that. That's not a way to speak to the industry. And it just rose that pain point that actually you're working, even if you're innovating in somewhere, you're still innovating in an environment. There is something there. There is already an infrastructure. The people are there. You can't innovate without taking them into account and work with the industry that you're trying to innovate in. Yeah. So that's what came out of that.
Amazing. And yeah, and there's definitely been a lot of founders misunderstanding this point, and I think also underestimating the, let's call it, the complex nature of gatekeeping in the industry. And somehow, at least that's my sense of it, most people want to work with one of their own in a way that, we need to have a lot of things in common of our understanding of the industry, a common network. Okay, so you recognized this gap in 2017, say, okay, I'm going to help some of these startups do this. Was that an overnight thing, and how did you transition into that?
It wasn't overnight, but it was pretty quick. I realized that I transitioned first from music to innovation, and it was very interesting. I still missed the music side of things. So when I found this again, I kind of held on to it. And I did meet them, and after that I went to Mama Festival. So that's a convention and concerts in Paris. And we did a pitch session, and I got to meet other startups as well. And I met up with a few people in the ecosystem in France who were pushing for the ecosystem of music tech to grow. So Music Tech France wasn't around at that time. We created that a little bit later, but I still met with a few people pushing for this, who were at the origin of Music Tech France afterwards, of course. But yeah, that's when I thought that makes more sense to me. And while it's a bit difficult to just go by yourself, being a freelancer in an ecosystem that doesn't really exist. And I was out of school. I think I finished school maybe 2 years before, so I wasn't very sure about myself. But I still got into it, and I left that job and went to be a freelancer because I thought, well, not doing that now, I'm not going to do that later, obviously. And since I got these few people around me, I thought I'm going to get a little bit of little pushes from them. So that's how I got to moving on to the next phase.
Okay. There's so many things to unpack, and most of the people listening to this podcast, I would define as innovators within the music industry, and that's sort of the consistent narrative we have. What was it specifically about? Now you said you had maybe it was a hypothetical company of someone who wants to disrupt the way you managed rights. So I can't remember, something in that direction. What was the first thing you addressed head on that people were getting wrong in the way they worded these kind of stuff?
First, I mean, the first people I worked for were usually tech people who created the great platform, the great product, the great thing, but they're tech people. So they talk about very technical things in technical terms. And you need to find the right person at a record label or major or anyone you're trying to target who speaks the same language, which is usually pretty tough to find. Sometimes they don't really exist within that structure. So first thing that I tried to do was getting the message a bit clearer for the industry. So that was the main thing. And I got started in 2018, and not all of the main companies in music had director of innovation, for example. So it was about also finding the right way in. And we strategized a little bit more the communication. So it wasn't just trying to get someone from that company or that label. It was more about finding the right people to talk to. And it was more precise. So that's the main thing. And I'm still doing that now. It's usually just strategize a little bit more and be precise in the communications that you're setting, because you can't address everyone at the same time, especially in music.
It's really interesting about the thing with, let's say you have a company or product, and that can be one thing and in one communication form be totally misunderstood and not be attractive. And then by tweaking the narrative or the way the wordings even, or who you speak to, can become attractive. So there's something about, no matter what you have, sometimes the key to unlocking the potential is how you talk about it and who you talk to. But did you feel, when you started with this, that there was a lot of resistance from the industry to take these kind of meetings and conversations?
I don't think there was much resistance. I'm thinking there weren't that many resources to answer the demand for these meetings, for example. I got to trying to create bridges, trying to open conversations. And sometimes I would have someone facing me saying, we don't really know who would be able to answer your questions, or if we have someone in-house able to talk about these things. So I'm not sure it was full resistance. It would be just, it took a little while to get up on the train. That might be the main thing that we noticed, at least at the beginning. It's less the case now. But still, in the early years when I was working with some startups by myself, that's the first thing that I noticed, and it was pretty surprising to me, at least. But that's usually what I say to the people I work with is, you can have the greatest product, the greatest projects. If you don't know how to talk about this and who you're supposed to talk about this with, it's gonna be great, but nobody really is gonna use that. So that's a shame. So yeah, that's something you need to not overlook, because communications tends to come at the end of the process. So you
Yeah.
develop, you create the product, you create the platform, it's great, but you still need to make sure that people know about it. And especially when you're doing a lot of B2B solutions, or if you're very niche, you still need to be upfront about what you do. And especially when sometimes there is resistance, sometimes there are some people not really open to it. I mean, right now everyone is talking about AI. We have a lot of people, I don't say scared, like worried about what it could imply to the music industry. And if you're not communicating about what you do and try to educate about what you're developing or what you want to use AI for, and what you're planning on doing with your solution, there are a lot of missed opportunities. So that's really important, to make sure that everyone knows where you stand on the few topics, but also what you're trying to develop there.
Hmm. You're the expert, so I'm going to ask this as a question, but I do have an opinion, and that is, a lot of the times, proper product development come from the correct conversations, and the correct conversations are directly dependent on clear communication. So also the correct product iteration comes from having at the beginning good communication. Is that an assumption that you would agree to?
Oh yeah. I mean, again, something that I say very often. I'm fairly sure that everyone who has worked with me heard me saying this at least once. Is that when you work in the music industry, even if you're working with a platform, with a label or whatever, in the end, you're working for the artists, and you should know what they're expecting, because there are no artists, there is no music industry, and you're not working with anyone. The
Hmm.
end game is making sure that the industry works, and they are at the center of everything. And I'm usually working with B2B platforms or solutions, so it's very rare that I get in touch with artists. But you have to make sure that you know what you're doing and where you're aiming at.
Hmm.
And yeah, so that's usually what I say. So it can go from doing just some focus groups or some surveys to make sure that you understand the goal and the feedback that you could have depending on what you're developing. Or it's just getting some feedback from your users, making sure that you're developing the right thing right now, the right feature. If you're developing something that nobody really uses, that's just wasted time. So you have to make sure that you understand the environment where you innovate in.
Hmm. There's something about the strength of the ecosystem that you're working with as well, because one thing is individual companies communicating better, have a better PR strategy in order to, I would assume, optimize the chances of building something of success. But then there's also the surrounding industry that is dependent, but also separated from the individual company that you work with. And when you co-founded Music Tech France, what was going through your mind? What was the intention there?
Music Tech Friends was an interesting thing, because at the very beginning we were nine. At the beginning there were 9 people. We weren't doing the same job, but we were in the same industry, meaning that we would see each other at Mama or Meetem for those who were there, but that was it. But we didn't really have the same job. I've always been some kind of advisor, communications, that whole thing in the music tech field. But we have a ticketing specialist, a music price specialist, audio aspiration. I mean, a lot of things, but we would never work together per se, but we didn't really cross paths. But we kind of needed to have everyone's feedback and making sure that the industry was working well. And yeah, so that's why we decided to create Music Tech France, because we felt like we needed the ecosystem. We needed to feel like we were part of something. Um, but and I mean, we weren't about to take any meetings together because we didn't have anything to work on together. But
Hmm.
still, we still needed to create that whole music tech field. So that's how we got to create Music Tech France, and we created that at the Mama Festival. So we're at the same place at the same moment, thinking the next time will be next year, and we can't really do anything with that. So yeah, that's how we created Music Tech France. Yeah.
Hmm. What is the benefits from having these synergy structures? Uh, how does it help?
Well, first, Music Tech Funds was created because we felt like there's business that we need to work on together and we need to have more weight. So the first thing for Music Tech Funds is actually creating some meetups, and we have at least one every month, approximately. We try to keep that pace, and we try to have some themes, or try to have someone talk to us about some experience that they had. So it's first is just knowledge, and making sure that everyone is able to connect with everyone within Music Tech Friends. So that's the main thing that we're able to do. But we're also representing the full ecosystem. So we're in close contact with institutions here in France. So the National Center for Music, for example. We're there to just give them a bit of insights of what's happening in the field, and helping our members. So usually we have pretty small companies, not only startups and small companies, but that's the majority of our members, who are trying to get some grants or some funds, or it just helps them have a bit more weight towards these institutions. So that's the main thing that we're trying to do, just create that whole umbrella.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's one of the main activities. And we just released actually a survey of our ecosystem a few weeks back now.
Hmm. One of the things that I see from the outside with companies missing these structures is that they get lost really fast. Like it's really easy to get lost in this industry, like who to speak with, how to focus, who are my peers, who can I talk with about this, and that doesn't help anyone. Um, but you guys, together with a lot of other offices, took the step further and co-founded Music Tech Europe. Can you tell me a bit about what that means?
Well, Music Tech Europe it's the collection of a few other hubs like Music Tech France. No, we don't really all have the same infrastructure, so we're not exactly the same in every countries, but there are a few hubs like us who thought we need to do that, but on a higher scale. And yeah, we created Music Tech Europe to create the umbrella association for the association. So actually, all members for Music Tech Friends are directly linked, for example, to Music Tech Europe, because we are the bridge over there. And we're just helping the ecosystem grow a little bit better, and try to export the ecosystem a little bit easier. For example, next month we'll be at Sonar in Barcelona. So there is the Barcelona Music Tech Hub, which is another founder of Music Tech Europe. And they're planning a pitch session, some speed meetings with some investors, and we're involved in that. So we try to get the word out and have the collective meetup over there. We were at Eurosonic beginning of the year. We'll be at Line Check in Italy, of course, and the Music Tech Europe Academy has been launched as well. So that's an acceleration program for startups around Europe. So that's a great program as well. And we'll be at WISE, obviously, because we are putting together a mapping of AI solutions dedicated to life and that was funded by a European fund. So that's great, and we'll be presenting that at WISE.
Amazing. Well, I'm looking very much forward to WISE, and the AI space I think is extremely interesting, overwhelming, and obviously there's too much hype. There's too many services that doesn't actually do anything of value. That will probably show itself in 9 months' time. Who's dead by then? But it is an interesting space. But on the case of investment, now I'm just talking out of personal curiosity, but I'm sure all the founders listening to this and innovators, I believe, and I would ask you to help me understand what it is. But I believe there are consistently communication gaps between music technology, and investors that are not from music. Is this something you see a lot?
Well, yeah, there is, at least in France, I'm not really sure about the rest of the ecosystem of innovators, but at least in France, we don't really have any funds or VC or any investor focused on music. So usually, people who get these investors interested are just addressing more, I'm going to say generic, so just wider interest. And that's always a bit tricky because you're talking about the music industry. So that's, again, very complex. You really have to explain in details what you're doing, but we're still in the tech space, and sometimes it doesn't. It's pretty tricky. It's always something. I mean, it's rough to explain exactly what the music tech company does, because already music and tech need to dialogue even better. It's great that now we have more open dialogues, but still, we still have some communications issues. So you're now supposed to talk to investors who aren't specialized in that field either. So it's getting pretty complicated.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't really have anyone very focused on the specific topic in France, and I'm guessing it's not the case around.
Most places, yeah.
Yeah. So it's always difficult, and even when we've just had a few companies who raised money. We have Groover that just got some money as well, and we have a few of them. But when they raise money, it's not that much money. When we look at other tech spaces, it feels very small. It's great.
Yeah.
That's really a challenge to raise money when you're in the music industry, but it's still small amounts. So you can feel that music is sometimes just people just refrain from music. It's not a safe bet. So you have to play your cards well.
Yeah, and there's so much to unfold on it. I'm in secret. I don't think I've said it on the podcast, but I'm secret also researching on the topic of the intersection between behavioral finance and investing in music, because there's so many things to be explored in that. I'll do that in a secret, but now it's no secret anymore. But I want to understand more. If you could pinpoint for me some exact mistakes that you consistently have seen when a music tech startup communicates to investor.
I mean, I can be very specific here, but usually what we saw is some companies try to give everything, every details, everything. They just they try to give as many informations that they can to some investors, and it's the goal behind that is to reassure, saying that, see, we've done that and we have this, and it's great to do that, but it also gives an unsure position, and sometimes it spooks a little bit the investors. And since we're in a very specific industry, sometimes when you try to they basically just overwhelming the people behind the desk, and we've seen that a lot. And sometimes also, I mean, for what we've seen is usually when you raise money, it also depends a lot on the founder of the company. I mean, they're embodying the projects, obviously. And the music tech field, when you're creating, funding a music tech company, it's just, you kind of have to be passionate about what you do. I mean, that's a very specific niche sector, so you kind of have to love what you do. And sometimes not that much represented. I mean, we've seen a few people trying to refrain from showing how passionate they were about their projects, which is weird, but that can only help, of course. And yeah, so that's maybe the main two issues that I've witnessed.
Mm. Yes, in other words, simplifying, not overwhelming, and
Yeah,
and keep your cool.
yeah, I'm guessing that's applicable to other industries as
Yeah.
well. Since you're addressing what we've seen, at least for the projects that we supported, when you're addressing an investor and you're working in music, you're not addressing a fund that is specialized in music. You're addressing someone that kind of likes that industry and just is interested in what you do for what you do. So you have to have the right position. You're talking. You can't really think that's their main investment that they'll be doing. That's not their main project. It's always kind of the side, because music can be their main topic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, passion has a lot to do with this.
Yeah. I as people might know, I also consult music tech companies on things comparable to this. You have much bigger clients, and you probably oftentimes work in later stages that I do, where I work at the earliest stages most of the time. And one of the things that I'm exploring is what I call parallel narratives. And that is basically, you have something within music where you can tell the same story, but with a different narrative. Like the easiest thing for me to describe is, for example, if you work within, let's say, a record label. You have a record label. So what are you doing? You're not developing an artist. You're actually building towards owning IP rights at one point that could be sold at X multiple for recurring revenue. And so that's an alternative asset class that can be traded on the open market. So you sort of now went into, okay, this is shares. And obviously, the pioneers, I believe, in the public communication of this is Hypnosis, that, really went out 5 years ago. Obviously, it's been going on for a long time, but they were, at least in my opinion, the first one to make a splash about it to the general public. And I believe there's many of those parallel narratives that can be used in order to lower the barrier of understanding that music tech founders can really work with.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it's something that we've been working on with, I'm guessing, all of our clients up until now, because again, you're speaking to an industry that is very specific, and you can't really address, if you're working with for a record label or in partnerships with a label, and also addressing some artists, you can't talk the same way to both these targets. So we've been working in defining and strategizing more your communications, and it can't be the last thing that you add to the list, saying, okay, we developed all the product, we have the platform, we have everything, and now we're gonna say that it exists. Basically, you can't really do that now, especially in music now.
Another thing that I'm trying out, and now because you're the expert, so I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on it. Another thing I'm trying out with my clients, which I think is right, is we have this exercise where we see, okay, how little can we communicate about music? Not because we're apologizing for music, but like, when you say music, there's already an assumption, there's already emotional correlates, and that sort of is already setting grain. And obviously you need to touch point of all the most important things, but instead of like having plastering like artists all over a pitch deck, set the scene, they get its music, now speak their language. If it's a marketing platform going for marketing investors, which might be the right fit, then maybe we should set the scene, but then we talk about marketing, if that makes sense. And so that's sort of the thing I'm trying. So my question is, do you think there's some merit to that?
To talk about the
Music as little as possible sometimes.
oh yeah. I think, I mean, we've been working with a lot of B2B solutions, so yes, I think it makes a lot of sense to show that you know. So it's something like this. Show that you're able to understand the skills and the actual job, because again, you shouldn't avoid talking about artists or labels or whoever you want to work with. But still, you have to show that you know your job. Something that we've been working on with a tech company that we're supporting with Resonance in their communications is talk about the technical stuff. No, you're a tech company working with music, so talk about the rights, talk about the data, talk about the tech side of things. Know that make sure that everyone is able to know that you're knowledgeable both in tech and music, for
Yep.
example.
Yeah. So
And
in that case, like the other way around. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's you have to adapt, obviously, but
Yeah.
still it makes a lot of sense, and it's also the something interesting to do and important to know how to do when you're asking for grants or some public grants. And usually there are, at least in France, in the case, you have big submissions to do. Sometimes applications can take a lot of times, and they go through committees and selections, and you have to be very specific and open about how you work. And that's not only about saying exactly what you do, but how you do it. And that's an interesting take to have as well.
Mathilde, I'll let you go soon because you've been very generous with your time. And if the audience want to hear more of this and meet you, we're going to be at the WISE conference in Berlin in, I think, 2 weeks. I haven't ordered the hotel yet, so I'll do that. But I do want to sort of pick your brain on something, and what do you believe is the future for music tech? Is this going to be a better place to be in? Is this going to be more influx of capital? What do you see happening the next 5 to 10 years in this space?
I mean, it definitely will be very exciting to be in the music tech field in the next few years, because it's going so fast that everything is going to just move around at an incredible pace. I'm guessing the main thing I'm witnessing that now, and I'm guessing it's going to catch on, but we've seen up so far some waves. You saw the NFT waves, you saw the metaverse, and now we're in AI. Basically, you have these keywords, and you always see some new companies just pop up a bit everywhere. For example, we had NFTs all around the place for 2 or 3 years ago. Now it's not the case, and the ones that stuck are the ones that created something that the NFTs were a mean to an end. That wasn't the goal. Wasn't to create an NFT, and that's what stuck for those who was stuck.
Yep.
And even now, they're not really talking about the tech that they're using. They're just talking about what they do. And I'm witnessing that with AI, for example. We're supporting a repertoire that did an AI integration. So they went out and got the tech somewhere else at Sinai, actually. And they're innovating for a goal that they have an end game. They thought, okay, this makes sense, and we're going to integrate that now that we know how to do it. And we've seen a lot of innovation for innovation, basically just taking the first main thing, the fame, and integrate that to a platform. But right now we've seen more and more, I'm going to quote that, like sensible innovation. And I mean, it makes more sense.
Yep.
And I think the music tech field is now a bit more solid, a bit more structured, and there are more discussions and conversations. And innovation becomes a global discussion. And I'm guessing that within the next years, people are going to talk a bit more about the innovation in music, and see what makes sense, what doesn't, and it's going to be a bit smarter. It's going to be done a bit smarter. For example, a few years back, we just got in touch with two companies that created speakers. One was in concrete, another one was in wood that you could carry on your back. They realized that half of the tech that they developed for the audio was the same. They did that each other. They did that the exact same thing. And now I'm seeing a lot more collaboration. For example, repertoire is cyanide, but there are more collaboration between music and tech, but also in music tech itself. So it's going to be exciting to see how we can build that together.
Amazing. I'm very excited about it, and I think you've chosen the right field to communicate because first of all, there's a need, and it's growing, and it is fun. Well, Mathilde, we won't spill the beans too much. You'll be at Wise. I'll be at Wise. Everyone listening, come to Wise. It's going to be fun. And we're going to talk about important stuff. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about music tech. We're going to talk about investment. That's some things I'm hosting. It's funny. It's funny. Like there's so many things happening, and you see this as well. Like this is the place to be. Wise, obviously, but like this industry, it is not something I want to miss out on. Well, Mathilde, thank you for staying and enduring my awkward ending. But I am I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. Thank you so much.
We'll see that on panels at Wise.
Yeah.